So, currently reporting from Beaumont, California, an old stomping ground for myself. It's about an hour and a half east of proper Los Angeles, and this is where I lived for like 2 or 3 years, grinding 1-3 and 2-5. Since then, life has changed a bit. I've moved into Orange County and mostly play on streams exclusively now, but today we are back for some 1025 and a walk down memory lane. Right, so this is a place we've been to before on the vlog a few times. It's the only home game I've ever really played. What is going on with this thing in my hair? Anyway, like I said, we are playing a 1025 home game today, and it's no more than 12 hours after the biggest win of my entire life. Last night I played on Hustler Casino Live and ended up winning over $250,000. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to adjust to these stakes, but I suspect everything will be just fine. If you guys haven't seen that video, by the way, check it out. I'll put the link in the description. Probably my most favorite vlog yet. But anyway, today we are just going to be playing some slightly smaller stakes, but still no small chunk of change. You know, 1025, the swings could be pretty big. I wouldn't be surprised if I won or lost over $10,000 today. And it's always a fun group of guys, so I suspect the hands will coincide with that style of game. But anyway, that's all I got to share with you guys for now. Let's head inside and play some cards.
All right, everyone, here we go again. Today we're playing 1025 uncapped. I sit with $10,000, and in the first interesting one, there's a raise to 75, and then someone in middle position makes it 250. I'm looking down at king queen offsuit in late position, and against an open and a re-raise, best course of action here is probably fold or occasionally put in a raise of my own. Not really interested in cold calling this raise, so this time I decide to raise it up myself, make it 600 to go. Initial raiser folds, but the player who made it 250 makes the call, so we're going heads up in position to a flop of 10-9-4 rainbow. He checks, I bet small, although I think checking back is also okay, since this flop is better for him than me. Anyway, he calls, and we see the 7 of spades on the turn. He checks, and I don't really have a plan aside from continuing to barrel. I feel like he could have called on the flop with a lot of hands that will now fold the turn, such as ace highs and such. A little bit optimistic, but yeah, I'm here to give the action. So I put in a bet of $1,000, and once again, my opponent makes the call. So not looking good until we make a pair on the river, the queen of hearts. Interestingly enough, my opponent now leads out for $1,750. Action's on me, and I feel like this isn't really a strong line that my opponent's taken. Seems like I'll almost always have the best hand, but not really sure what worse hand will call a raise at this point, so I don't know, I think it over for a few seconds and decide to just call. Turns out we end up chopping against king-queen offsuit from my opponent as well, so we both had the exact same hand, and we both love the river, all that drama just for a chop. In the second one, I look down at a much better hand, pocket kings, raise it up to 75, and good news, player on my left raises himself to $250. Action gets back to me, and of course, with a hand as good as kings, I'm going to put in another raise. If I'm doing that with king-queen offsuit, pocket kings is certainly qualified. Kick it up to $1,000, and I'm happy to see my opponent makes the call, so we're going to go heads up out of position this time to a flop of jack 6 deuce rainbow. Safe board for kings. I continue with a bet of $600, and my opponent makes the call. Turn card is the 7 of clubs, shouldn't really change anything. Sure, maybe we'll sometimes run into a hand like 7-6 suited, but looks safe enough to me. So I continue betting for value, $1,200 this time. And again, my opponent makes the call, so I'm hoping he's got a hand like ace-jack, maybe pocket queens. Looking for a clean river card to get the absolute maximum amount of value. And that's sort of what we get. It's the 8 of spades. Sure, it puts some straights and 2-pair combinations out there that are possible, but given all the raising pre-flop and the way this hand has gone down so far, it seems unlikely we'll ever be up against something like that. So my opponent's got around $3,000 remaining. I'm going to go for it all. I announce all in. Would also be doing this with bluffs, so doing it with kings seems to make sense to me. And after a few seconds, my opponent makes the call. Looks like good news, and sure enough, pocket kings are the best hand as he flashes me the ace jack of hearts. Excellent result, and we end up winning an over $10,000 pot early on. Moving right along, in this one, middle position opens to $75. Someone makes the call, and I'm looking down at king 10 suited on the button. Could go either way here between calling or raising, but given that someone called, I feel like we're incentivized to raise and try to pick up that dead money. So I make it $300, and we don't pick up any dead money because both of them make the call. Three ways, at least in position with a good hand, to a flop of ace jack 3 with 1 diamond. Gives me a straight draw, and there's an ace and a jack out there, so I can pretend I've got some good stuff. So when it checks to me, I bet $250. First player folds, but the other guy calls. Going to a turn which is interesting. The king of hearts, giving me second pair, and most likely enough for some showdown value, but not really strong enough to bet and hope to get called again. So when he checks, I check it back. We see a good river. It's the deuce of clubs. So now we should be winning this hand most of the time, unless, of course, we're up against an ace. But I don't think that's too likely given how this hand has played out. Of course, my opponent seems to disagree with that, though, because he leads out for $750, half the amount of the pot, giving us a really good price to call. And honestly, this is kind of a close spot. I've played against this guy quite a bit, and he does like to float flops and bluff later on. But that being said, it doesn't seem like this is a spot where he'll be too likely to do that, since my hand looks like it could easily be an ace. So yeah, I don't know, it's close. And usually when it's close, I put in the money. Sometimes it's player dependent, but against this player in particular, I am quite happy to give him action. So I do make the light call. Who knows, maybe we'll win sometimes, and this is not one of those times. My opponent has got 5-4 offsuit for a rivered straight. Not the hand I was expecting to see. I'll admit I was expecting to lose a fair amount of the time, but not to that hand. Nice hand, sir. You take this one. Next, there's an early position open to $100. Quite a big raise. Late position calls, and I'm looking down at 10-8 of diamonds in the small blind. Looks like good cards to me, and like I said earlier, I am here to bring the action. This is not advised. You should probably just fold this hand against an early position open, but I didn't drive all the way from Anaheim to Beaumont to fold 10-8 suited. That is my favorite hand of all time, at least today it is. I make it $500. Early position folds, but late position calls. So not exactly what I was anticipating, but that's okay. We go to a flop of 9-3 deuce with 2 hearts. Not a whole lot out there for me, but I raised pre-flop. I'm going to pretend I got an overpair. I put in $500. My opponent calls, which is not ideal, and we go from bad to worse on the turn. It's the 3 of hearts, bringing in a potential flush. I don't even have 1 heart in my hand, so I decide to check it. Good thing is I would also be doing this with good hands like aces and kings, so I'm not necessarily giving up on this pot altogether. When my opponent checks back and we see the 4 of hearts on the river, I've got 10 high and a dream, and I don't think he's got a very strong hand after checking back the turn. So I'm going to go for it. However, in terms of sizing, I don't think we have to go too big here since I'm representing a hand that I could very easily have. So I put in $600. This is also a good opportunity to win the pot for a very cheap bluff. Doesn't have to work too often to make this bet profitable, I guess. Anyway, my opponent thinks it over for a while, says he does not have a flush. That's good news to me, and he eventually does end up folding 6-5 of diamonds for a river straight. Don't blame him for folding, though. I could very easily have a heart in my hand. This time I don't, and luckily we take it down. Next, middle position opens to $75. Button kicks it up to $250, and once again, I am looking down at a hand I want to play in the small blind. Ace-Queen offsuit. I feel like a broken record, but once again, I feel like there's a few different options on the table. I choose the aggressive route, as I often do when I play slightly smaller games. I make it $1,000 to go. The initial raiser who made it 75 calls, but the button who kicked it up to 250 gets out of the way. Kind of a weird game we got going on here, but once again, heads up to a flop. 10-6-4 with 2 hearts. Not ideal, but once again, I could easily have some strong hands. It seems like I never do, though. I put in a bet of $525. My opponent makes the call. When he makes this call, at least in real time, doesn't feel too confident to me. When the turn comes to 3 of hearts, I feel like he's not going to like this card. He could easily have some middle strength sort of hands that we're just trying to see what happens on the turn. And what's going to happen is I put in another bet. $2,000 this time, trying to get folds from non-believing weak pairs, maybe even a hand like Ace King or Ace Queen himself. $2,000 seems to be the magic number because after some thought, my opponent lets go of 10-9 suited. So yeah, that is an excellent result for us, and we once again succeed with a bluff. You know what's not a bluff though? Pocket aces. That's what I've got this hand. I raise it up to $75. Only the big blind makes the call, and we go heads up to a flop of King, King 5 with a flush draw. He checks, I bet small, he calls. Turn card is the 8 of clubs. He checks again, and now we can decide between checking back or continuing to bet. I've been bluffing so often today that I feel like checking back strong hands just makes no sense. So I continue betting, this time $125. And of course, instantly regret it as my opponent check raises to 300. Not loving the situation, but it's a small raise, and he could be doing this with worse hands, so I call, and we see the Jack of Hearts on the river. So now if he was check raising the flop with some sort of combo draw, like 7-6 of diamonds, for example, we're still ahead. Now he puts in a bet of $400, right around half pot. On one hand, we're getting a really good price. On the other, it doesn't seem like he's bluffing with this line and his sizings. But once again, we're up against the buddy that I'm quite happy to give action to, and who knows, we might win. So I toss in the call. My hand is just too good to fold, I think. Unfortunately, we end up losing this one to King 8 of Hearts. That's a full house. I don't have that. I only have a pair, so I lose. Moving right along, and this next one I've got King Jack. Open it to $75 and get 3 callers. 4 of us go into a flop, which is not bad. Jack 8-6 with 2 hearts. I've got top pair and decent kicker. There's also a lot of hands that beat me, but there are also quite a few hands that I can get some value from, like draws and worse top pairs. So when it checks to me, I bet $200. First player folds, but then the next guy check raises to $500. Once again, a very small raise, similar to the last hand. Other player folds, now it's back on me, and I am going nowhere just yet. I make the call, we've got position and a decent hand. Don't have any hearts in my hand either, so a little bit more likely my opponent's got some sort of flush draw. Turn card is decent, it's the Ace of Spades, so, you know, if he had a hand like Ace Jack, which could have had us in bad shape, that seems a lot less likely now. However, my opponent doesn't seem to care at all about that because he now jams all in for $1,500 and some change. I don't know, it's another close spot. We are beating quite a few hands like 9-7 suited, 7-5 suited, a pair plus a flush draw like 8x of hearts. And these are all hands I suspect my opponent would play in this fashion. That said, he could also have better hands like 8-6 suited, Jack 8 suited, flopped sets, I don't know, maybe like Ace X of hearts. Yeah, there's quite a few hands we lose to as well. So like I said earlier, when it's close and I'm at a home game where I want to give action, I am going to put chips in the pot. This time is no different. Unfortunately, we are up against Ace Jack and can't improve on either run out after running it twice. Couldn't lose it to a nicer guy though. This is Ernie. For those of you guys who are familiar with the Morongo crew, probably the nicest guy in a 50-mile radius. So nice hand, Ernie. Enjoy the money. So it's been a swingy day so far. Won some big pots, lost some big pots. The show goes on. In this one, middle position opens to $75, and I'm looking down at Queen 8 of clubs in late position. Not really strong enough to call, I think, so probably best off just folding or raising. This time, I raise it up. That's why it's in the vlog. By the way, you guys say this all the time where I talk about raising or folding and always raise. That's not necessarily the case. In fact, I fold most of the time, but obviously I don't include that in the video. So I don't know. I just feel like that's worth noting. Anyway, I make it 275. He makes the call and we go heads up to a flop of King 7-5 with 2 spades. He checks. I bet $200 and he makes the call. Turn card is the Jack of Spades. He checks again, and this time I bet $400, hoping he folds a 7 or, just any sort of middle strength hand that didn't believe me on the flop. He makes the call, though, not interested in letting his cards go just yet. River is the 3 of hearts, and he checks it once again. And for some reason, my hand is a pretty clear give up, but I do not give up. Instead, I put in one more bet, trying to get him off a king. $1,000 in the middle. Who knows? Maybe he'll let it go. He thinks for a little bit and does not let it go. Instead, he tosses in the money, and we're going to lose this one to King Jack of diamonds. A completely unnecessary punt brought to you by yours truly. Next, this hand goes down where early position opens to 75. There's a raise to 250 from someone in middle position, and I'm looking down at Ace Queen of Spades in the small blind. I feel like I keep telling the same story. This time I raise it up to $800. Early position raiser folds, but the guy who made it 250 makes the call. So we're going to go heads up out of position to a flop of ace 7-3 with 1 spade. I finally have something in a big pot. I continue with a bet of $500. My opponent makes the call, and we see a pretty good turn card. It's the 4 of clubs. If my opponent did have an ace, this shouldn't really pair his kicker too often, so I'm going to continue betting for value. I put in $1,000. Again, my opponent calls, so perhaps a bit concerning, but I still feel like we've got the best hand. He could easily have a hand like ace-jack, ace-10 suited, etc. But then the river comes the 5 of spades, putting a 4-liner to a straight out there. And I guess occasionally, making it so that we're now losing to ace-5 suited. Not entirely sure if we can continue to get value from a worse ace like ace-jack or ace-10. Maybe there's some merit to betting a third time, but in reality, I think it's a little bit too thin, and it would be really tough for me to be bluffing as well after how this hand has played out. So I finally decide to slow down and check it. My opponent does not. Instead, he puts in a bet of $4,100. Quite a big bet compared to the size of the pot. And again, it's a tough spot. This is against Dentist Dave. For those of you guys who are not familiar, he is a semi-regular on the Hustler Casino live streets, and he's no stranger to bluffing and showing a lot of heart in hands. But at the same time, I doubt he would be doing this with a bluff. Just seems difficult to think of a bluff he would have after all this action. And is he really value betting a worse hand like this? I highly doubt it. In fact, I think he would almost always check back an ace at this point, even ace-king. So, yeah, I don't really know what to do. At this point, Dave offers me to show a card for $100. Considering that I'm making a $4,000 decision, I decide that that's a worthy investment. So I toss him $100, and he turns over the 5 of clubs. That's right. He's got at least a pair on the river, and it seems like we're most likely up against ace-5 suited, maybe 6-5 suited, 7-5, all these combinations of hands that have us in bad shape. So I decide to let it go. He turns over his other card to be a nice guy, and it is the 5 of hearts for a flopped nothing. Then he turned a straight draw, river to set. Yeah, so I guess he had the best hand pre-flop. It's only fair. Nice hand, Dentist Dave. Next, it's time for me to exercise some discipline, but will I be able to do it? Let's see. There's an early position open to $75. I look down at ace-king of hearts in the small blind, one of the best hands created, so I raise it up to $300, and only the early position raiser makes the call. So we go heads up to a flop of queen-jack 4 with a heart, giving me a straight draw, 2 overcards, and a backdoor nut flush draw. A lot of stuff going on for me, so I bet $150. My opponent makes the call. We get a good turn card. It's the 6 of hearts. Could go either way now between overbetting or just checking and seeing what he does. I decide to check it this time. My opponent does not. He puts in a bet of $400. For a bet this small, I think we have some options between check raising, just calling, or, I guess those are the only 2 options. This time I decide to call, since this opponent isn't really the type to bet light. I feel like this turn bet indicates a very good hand or just a bluff. So no point raising against those kinds of hands. I toss in the 400, and we get some help on the river, but it's not exactly what I wanted. The ace of clubs, giving me top pair, top kicker, but the situation is a little bit dicey. I check, hoping he checks it back. He does not. Instead, he puts in a bet of $900. And even though I've got a really good hand, unless he's bluffing, I don't think we've got the winner. Would he really be value betting a worse hand than top pair at this point? Seems unlikely. So even though, like I said, it's a great hand, it's just a bluff catcher at this point. And I don't know, I got bad vibes this hand. Didn't seem like we were going to win too often. So after a few seconds, I decide to show him my hand and ask him if it was a good fold. And he says that he had me beat. Now, of course, we'll never really know the truth because he didn't show me, but this is someone I've played with quite a bit, one of the most honest guys that I've played with, and I'll take his word for it so that I can sleep at night. Next, this one goes down where I open ace-3 of hearts to $75. There's 3 callers, and we go 4 ways to a flop of king, queen, 4 with 1 heart. Action checks to me, and we've got a lot of good turn cards. Any heart, any straight draw, obviously an ace going on, and this is just a board that's going to be good for me. So I decide to continue betting $100. Only the small blind calls, and we go to a turn card. I'm looking for anything to continue barreling on. The 5 of diamonds is definitely one of those cards. I've got a straight draw now, and one of the worst holdings that I would ever have in this spot. So when he checks, that qualifies for an overbet. Would also do this with good hands, of course. So with ace-3 suited, I'm going for it. I put in a bet of $600. Unfortunately, my opponent calls, so I'm probably going to shut it down now on the river. Not really sure. I guess it depends on the card. Unless, of course, the deuce of spades arrives, which it does, giving me essentially the nuts. Even better news is that now my opponent leads out by saying all in for $1,300. Yeah, the stuff that dreams are made of. I, of course, call right away and show. We end up winning against Queen 5 suited for a turn 2 pair. Of course, that is no good against our river straight, and we win this over $4,000 pot. And that brings us to the last interesting hand of the night. I straddled a $50. There's an early position open to 150. Small blind calls, and I defend with Queen 10 offsuit. 3 ways to a flop of Ace 7 5 with 2 hearts. I've got the Queen of Hearts. Not that that's really worth much, just telling you guys the story. Action checks to the initial raiser, who decides to continue betting $225. Small blind folds, and this is someone I've played with quite a bit as well. His name is Matt. He is my ex-roommate, if you guys are familiar. And I don't know. I feel like if he had an ace, he would check back pretty often. So I think this bet indicates some draw of some kind, which is not great since Queen High doesn't even beat that many draws. But I decide to give him some light action. He's been having a rough day, and giving him some chips doesn't seem like the worst idea. So I make the call, and we see the 4 of spades on the turn. I check it again. And now he checks it back. Not really sure what's up with that, but when we see the Jack of clubs on the river, I check it a third time, and he now bets $500. Not really sure what this means. I expected him to either check it back or bet pretty big. And yeah, like I said on the flop, I don't think he would play an ace this way. I don't think he's going to go for value with less than an ace. And Queen High beats some stuff, you know? So why not? We're getting a good price. I toss in the 500, and he says, "You're good." I turn it over. Still expecting to lose to King High sometimes, but this is not one of those times. We end up beating Queen 8 of diamonds, so a pretty funny hand here. I was trying to give a friend of mine some light action, perhaps a little too light, because we end up taking this one down with the old Queen 10 offsuit. Pretty sweet note to end the session on. Like always, I hope you all enjoyed the hands.
Okay, so just finished playing this 1025 game, and much to my surprise, I actually won a good amount of money. In fact, I won around $7,000, which was not expected, to say the least. Lately, when I've been dropping down in stakes, it's been pretty sloppy. Not that I necessarily played well today, but at bare minimum, I ran well, and yeah, things ended up working out for me. I'm gonna go get some sleep though, because tomorrow I have my private game at Hustler, and we have a big one planned. I think it's 5100. By the way, if anyone out there is interested in playing 2550, I run one of those games every weekend at Hustler, so hit me up on Instagram and we can figure it out. But yeah, that's it for today, guys. As always, thank you guys for watching. Thanks for the support. I hope you enjoyed the hands, and until next time, good luck at the tables. Peace.